All right. All right, good afternoon. Welcome. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the San Jose City Council for the afternoon of March 3rd. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Kamei? Here. Campos?
Present.
Tordios?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
Ortiz?
Present.
Mulcahy?
Here.
Dwan?
Here.
Candelas?
Here.
Casey? Here. Foley? Here. Mahan?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. If you are able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's invocation will be provided by the Rainbow Women's Chorus, and Councilmember Tordios will tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. In a few short minutes, my colleagues will be presenting a proclamation celebrating Women's History Month, and so I couldn't think of a better group to kick off our first invocation of the month than the Rainbow Women's Chorus, a treble choir that welcomes women of all ages and backgrounds who come together, united by their love of singing. The Rainbow Women's Chorus's mission is to work together to develop musical excellence in an atmosphere of mutual respect and support, and they sing to enhance the esteem of all women, to celebrate diversity, and to touch people's hearts and lives. We're joined today by Ruth Huber, who serves as the conductor, co-artistic director, and composer in residence for the chorus. And Ruth actually studied conducting right here in downtown at our very own San Jose State University. The Rainbow Women's Chorus' most recent concert, Rise, 30 Years of Harmony and Pride, had the highest attendance of any concert in the chorus's history, and the chorus looks forward to continuing to celebrate their 30th anniversary throughout this year. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Rainbow Women's Chorus.
Arise and sing, let every voice be heard, with breath and sound, give meaning to the word. Arise, arise, let music fill the air, ringing and re-echoing everywhere. Arise and sing, let every voice be heard. Arise and sing, let every voice be heard, with breath and sound, give music to the air. Arise, arise, let music fill the air, ringing and re-echoing, let every voice be heard. Arise and sing, let every voice be heard, with breath and sound, give music to the air. Arise, let music fill the air, ringing and re-echoing everywhere. We're gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're gonna plant the seeds of justice. Plant the seeds of justice. Plant the seeds of justice. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly.
Wow, that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your talents with us. What a great way to start off our meeting. Thank you again. And that was the Rainbow Women's Chorus. Thank you, Councilmember Tordillos, for today's invocation. All right, we're on to our ceremonial items. Council members Kamei and Campos, Vice Mayor Foley, and City Manager McGuire, and City Attorney Susanna Alcala-Wood, City Clerk Tony Tabor. If you would all join me at the podium, we're going to recognize and proclaim March as Women's History Month.
And if we could have all the ladies representing our departments and offices come down as well, that'd be great.
Today is very special. We have someone from every department in the city of San Jose represented. Today we gather to celebrate Women's History Month, a time to recognize the incredible contributions that women have made to our society. From trailblazing pioneers like Mayor Janet Gray Hayes and Mayor Susan Hammer, who are figures of leadership and inspiration in the city of San Jose, and women across all of our departments who have a vital role in our community. Let us recognize the importance of women in our society. I would like to recognize the importance of leadership of the City Manager, Jennifer McGuire, City Attorney, Susana Alcala-Wood, City Clerk, Tony Tabor, Vice Mayor, Pam Foley, Councilmember Pamela Campos, and all the women in the city who are incredibly hard workers. Women have played a vital role in shaping our world. Let us celebrate grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. We stand on the shoulders of women who have fought tirelessly for equality, justice, and human rights. As we celebrate the progress we've made, we also acknowledge the challenges that still lie ahead. We must continue to fight for economic equality, equal opportunities, and equal pay for equal work. Well, there's something, huh? As women, we must continue to support each other, lift each other up, and create a world where women can thrive, reach their full potential, and be happy and successful. And now I'd like to ask our city manager, Jennifer McGuire, to say a few words before our mayor presents the proclamation.
Thank you, Councilmember Kamei. Good afternoon, everybody. Women's History Month celebrates women who have shaped our lives, strengthened our sense of belonging, and inspired many generations through their trailblazing spirit, leadership, and courage. I am so proud to work alongside so many women who serve today and who have previously served our city in many classifications in our organization, from staff specialists to firefighters to police officers to engineers to analysts and so many more. Behind me are women who are representing all of the amazing and hardworking women of our city from all of our departments and offices. So that's pretty amazing. These ladies have been working in our city from as little as 3 years to some of them almost 30 years in our organization. These women are being recognized for leading with compassion, inspiring innovation, and for their commitment to the community. I had the privilege of sitting around the table at a luncheon today, celebrating the work that they do for our city with Councilmember Kamei, Vice Mayor Foley, and Councilmember Campos. I also want to thank and acknowledge my appointee partners, City Attorney Susanna Alcala-Wood and City Clerk Tony Tabor, for your partnership throughout the last many years, and a very new one with our new city attorney, but I appreciate both of you very, very, very much. Thank you very much, and let's celebrate women. Thank you.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone who's exiting the chambers. Thank you for being here, especially the awesome hearts in the audience. Now it's my pleasure to invite Councilmember Campos to join me at the podium where we will recognize and proclaim March as Youth Arts Month. Councilmember?
Good afternoon, and thank you to my council colleagues as well as the arts advocates who are here today. I am proud to bring this proclamation forward as it combines two areas I care deeply about: the arts and our youth. And I'm especially proud about the community leader we have with us today who can speak from personal experience about how critical this intersection is for our community. Art gives our youth new tools to see the world differently, especially at a time when it is critical for their self-discovery and personal development. When our young people get involved in the arts, our community is all the better for it. After all, who here hasn't hung up a young child's drawing on their fridge or been to a school recital, play, or performance? Art brings our community together. To all the art leaders who show up for our youth, thank you. Thank you for inspiring our future leaders to be creative, critical thinkers who are unafraid to be their whole, authentic selves. Your work is felt, seen, and deeply appreciated by us all. And now I'd like to invite Joy Murrieta, Executive Director of Kids in Common, to share her remarks with us before the mayor and I present the proclamation recognizing March as Youth Arts Month in the city of San Jose.
Thank you, Councilmember Campos. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy Murrieta, and I serve as the Executive Director of Kids in Common here in Santa Clara County. And in this role, I work alongside partners across our region to strengthen systems that support youth well-being, opportunity, and equity. Before joining Kids in Common, I spent over a decade leading an organization dedicated to expanding access to the arts for young people. Both experiences have shown me that the arts are not just enrichment, they are essential to helping young people feel safe, connected, and supported. So thank you everyone for joining us in San Jose as we celebrate the youth and arts. This proclamation reminds us that when we support the arts, we're supporting something so much deeper than creativity. We're supporting youth well-being and the long-term health of our community. Today's young people are facing real pressures, and they need spaces where they can express themselves, connect with others, and feel a sense of belonging. The arts provide exactly those emotions, or those spaces where young people can create, perform, write, and explore new ideas. And when they do so, they gain healthy ways to process emotions, manage stress, and build resilience. They develop confidence, communication skills, and stronger relationships with peers and caring adults, all of which are critical and protective factors for behavioral health. The arts help young people feel seen and valued. When youth feel connected and supported, they make healthier choices, they build stronger identities, and they experience greater emotional well-being. And for our community, this matters. A city that invests in youth is a city that's investing in prevention, healing, and opportunity. It is a city strengthening the relationships and sense of belonging that make neighborhoods safer, healthier, and more connected. San Jose and the county have long recognized the importance of supporting youth not just academically, but socially and emotionally. And today's proclamation reaffirms the commitment and invites us to keep expanding access to creative spaces that help our young people thrive. Because when our youth are healthy, when they have outlets for expression, places of belonging, and opportunities to grow, our entire community becomes stronger. So thank you all for celebrating youth in the arts and for supporting the well-being and creativity of the young people who shape our future.
right, Councilmember Ortiz, if you would join me at the podium, we will recognize City Team Mayfair.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I see my friends coming down. It's truly an honor to recognize an organization that has had a steady presence in the Mayfair for more than 4 decades. Since 1957, City Team San Jose has strengthened Santa Clara County by providing meals, shelter, recovery services, and workforce pathways that help our most vulnerable neighbors move from crisis to stability. And in District 5, City Team at Mayfair has been doing that work for now over 40 years. What began as youth outreach, focused on mentorship, educational support, and positive engagement for young people, grew into something even larger, a trusted community anchor. From hosting summer camps that have gave hundreds of youth life-changing experiences, to repairing bikes for local neighborhood kids, to organizing neighborhood cleanups, City Team has always shown up in the East Side fully with their heart. And now, through their Vital Connections program, City Team strengthens entire families, addressing emotional, spiritual, vocational, and practical needs. Here in Mayfair alone, the pantry supports families 4,100 times and served 616 unique households. Across all locations, more than 2.5 million pounds of food were distributed last year. And that is not just service. That is sustained commitment to dignity and sustainability. In a couple moments, I'll ask the mayor to present the commendation, but before then, I would like to ask Mr. Ricardo Pineda, program supervisor at City Team Mayfair, to please share a few words with the crowd.
Wow, qué honor. Qué honor y qué privilegio es recibir este reconocimiento de parte de ustedes. Agradecemos grandemente a la ciudad del concejal de San José por valorar más de 30 años continuos en la comunidad de Mayfair. Este trabajo
We are very grateful to the City of San Jose councilmen for valuing over 30 continuous years in the Mayfair community. This job didn't exist. No, it wouldn't have been possible without the commitment and dedication of this extraordinary team we have here.
A lo largo de los años no solo hemos brindado apoyo alimenticio, sino que también recursos esenciales para la familia, sino que hemos ofrecido también acompañamiento espiritual y emocional que ha transformado a miles de vidas. Y lo más significativo es que muchas de las personas
Look, we have women and men who have served with passion and dedication in the community over the years. We have not only provided food support and essential resources for families, but we have also offered spiritual and emotional support that has transformed thousands of lives. And most significantly, many of the people who once received support are now leaders who share hope with others, impacting the community in spiritual, emotional, and academic ways. That is the true fruit of sustainable work, transformed lives that now help transform others. Once again, thank you. City of San Jose for this recognition and for believing in the power of humanitarian service that we, as a city or city in the neighborhood organization, have offered for many years. May God bless our city and every person committed to the well-being of the families of San Jose. Blessings to all.
Thank you. On behalf of this commendation on behalf of the entire Consejo.
Okay, thank you very much.
Gracias a ustedes. All right, picture. Come here.
Go this way a little bit.
Yeah, sure, la mitad.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, colleagues, for those ceremonial items. We're on to orders of the day. Does anyone on the council have any changes to the printed agenda? I'm not aware of any. I don't see any hands, so we will move on to the closed session report.
The mayor and council met in closed session on the items listed on the agenda, and there's nothing to report at this time.
Great. Thank you, Susanna. We are on to the consent calendar. Are there any items the council would like to pull from consent? Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
Great. Tony, do we have public comment on consent?
I have no cards for this.
Okay, coming back to the council, I'm not seeing any hands, so let's vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. We're on to the report of the city manager, item 3.1.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report today.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We're on to item 3.3, sewer rate setting audit report. We'll give Joe and the team a second to settle in, and then when you're ready, Joe, go ahead.
My apologies. So, good afternoon. I'm Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm here with Abele Obi and Hawad Hyder to present our audit of sewer rates, reviewing rate model assumptions, and developing reserve policies that would improve the rate setting process. Also in the box is Jeff Provenzano, the Director of Environmental Services Department. The city sets sewer rates to recover the costs of providing sanitary sewer and wastewater treatment services to residents and businesses. ESD sets the rates based on the overall volume of a customer's wastewater and the concentration of pollutants of the wastewater. The concentration of pollutants is also referred to as the strength of the wastewater. All customers pay the same unit rate for each wastewater component that ESD, or Environmental Services Department, treats. How a customer is billed, however, depends on the type of residence or business and the assumed or actual volume and strength of their wastewater. The objective of this audit was to assess the city's process for setting sewer rates. We had 3 findings. The first finding was that ESD should review assumptions within its rate model. ESD's rate model follows guidelines set by the state, which provides a reasonable basis for allocating costs to users. Integral to the rate model are assumptions about the volume and strength of wastewater, which can affect how San Jose sets sewer rates. We found that in 2014, the state determined the city's rate model complied with Clean Water State Revolving Fund requirements. We also found that a 2015 consultant study reported that the strength of wastewater reaching the regional wastewater facility did not match what was assumed in the rate model. However, the study recommended continuing with the current strength parameters until field sampling occurs. At the time of the audit, the field sampling had not yet occurred. I will note that during the audit, ESD hired a consultant to begin that work. So we have recommendations to ensure its rate model assumptions reflect current conditions. ESD should study assumptions in the rate model and update as necessary, update procedures around when assumptions should be reviewed, and consider implementing a software solution for rate calculations. The second finding was that ESD should develop formal reserve policies. ESD maintains reserves in the Sewer Service and Use Charge Fund for operations and capital projects. We found that the amount of funds held in reserves and unrestricted fund balance in the fund has fluctuated over time, and ESD did not have formal policies defining the intended purposes or setting target levels for reserves in the fund, whereas we found formal reserve policies or practices are common among other wastewater utilities. To enhance risk management and planning for future needs, we recommended that ESD develop a formal policy for sewers fund reserves that defines their intended use and target levels. Our last finding was that ESD could improve transparency around the rate-setting process. We found that consolidating procedures on the frequency of wastewater sampling would improve transparency for how bills are calculated for industrial users. And we also noted that ESD's sewer rate webpage could be enhanced with clearer explanations of how rates are set. So to improve transparency, we recommended ESD document procedures for sampling decisions and notifying users of changes as appropriate and updating the sewer rate webpage and add clear rate setting explanations. Report has 6 recommendations. I want to thank Environmental Services Department for their time and insight during the process. I ask that you accept the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but first I'll turn it over to Jeff for the administration's response. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And generally, the administration's administrative response is in this report. Generally, all the items that are recommended are green-lighted from our perspective. We're very happy, as always, to work with the auditor's office. A good deep dive into our programs is always appreciated. Good recommendations, and looking forward to working on those and returning to council when they're completed.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the report. Let's go to public comment if we have any, Tony.
I have no comments for this item.
Okay.
Move acceptance of the report.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. Tony, let's vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you all. On to item 3.4, reasonable accommodation process and personal property impound handling. We have a staff presentation. So we'll give everybody a moment.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is John Cicerelli. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. With me today, Deputy Director Olympia Williams. Next to her, Director Zuma Maciel from the Office of Racial Equity, Racial and Social Equity, I should say, as well as Senior Deputy Attorney Johnny Phan. We're here to talk to you today about revisions to the existing property impound process, as well as a review of our accommodations process. The accommodations process is ahead of an abatement where we have a process that we developed last year to ensure anybody who needs an accommodation can reach out to us, and we can try to make that accommodation happen. With respect to accommodations, well, with both, we're responding here to former council direction to provide review of the accommodation process and training if needed, as well as a review of the property impound process, as well as training if needed. In this case, we are actually recommending some revisions to the storage procedure. Who is that? Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zulma, and she's going to talk about her findings.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Zulma Mastiel, Director of the City Manager's Office of Racial and Social Equity. Happy to be here today. This is by way of the Council Directive, where the City Manager's Office of Racial and Social Equity was directed to conduct a review of the current reasonable accommodation protocols and training materials. And the review included multifaceted, which is the multiple meetings with Housing and Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. We also did desk review of documents and recently a field observation. The review confirmed that the city's existing process meets legal requirements, but identified targeted operational improvements to enhance consistency and transparency. Around the data collection and reporting, we noticed that while departments are generally following established procedures, current tracking methods are decentralized and do not fully capture accommodation activity, particularly short-term or informal accommodations that are granted in the field. So some accommodations can happen at that very moment, they're just not all documented. Additionally, we believe that reasonable accommodations process for encampment engagements should be clearly defined and transparent. And to address this, we recommend that the Disability Affairs Officer work directly with the Housing Department, Public Works, Parks and Rec to clearly define the process and ensure all data tracking and reporting is centralized. We also believe that it would be important for the Disability Affairs Officer and members of our team in the Office of Racial and Social Equity to continue to work with Parks and Rec to review existing documentation used by Beautify San Jose during abatements where reasonable accommodations can be included and routed to housing for data reporting. The third area that we looked at, which was around the outreach and communications, so this is simply informing. Standard forms exist, but there are limited plain language materials explaining how to request an accommodation. The memorandum identifies the need for clearer, accessible, public-facing guidance. So we currently are working with departments to develop a simplified multilingual fact sheet explaining eligibility, examples of accommodations, how to request one, and what to expect in the process. These materials will be distributed during outreach and made available online prior to abatements. In the area around training, staff have already received reasonable accommodation training, but moving forward, we will support departments in updating training materials and protocols to better account for both visible and invisible disabilities and address ableism as it relates to abatement and housing processes to ensure services are equitable and accessible. We also want to support departments in formalizing onboarding and refresher trainings and embedding accommodation guidance into all operational trainings. This ensures accommodations are not treated as separate processes, but integrated into standard field operations. So in closing, I just want to thank Parks and Rec, Housing, and the City Attorney staff members for their collaboration. We, as the Office of Racial and Social Equity, look forward to continuing our work together as we focus on strengthening implementation, documentation, and communication to our unhoused disabled community members.
Okay, next we're going to talk about personal impound. But first I'm going to play a quick video, just a couple minutes, to set a little context as we talk about changes we make and why. Okay, so this video is actually of a recent encampment abatement we did just south of here near Willow along the Guadalupe. You can see a tent there. You see some items in the foreground, storage, gas tanks, gas cans. You'll see a few of those. You can see lots of bike parts. Obviously, there's a fair amount of debris that's laying around. This particular campsite had quite an interest in storage containers, so you'll see a lot of those here. You'll see things like suitcases, mostly empty. More oil, more gas. You can see as we look through this and try to imagine how difficult it is for our staff as we're working through something like this to try to decide, well, okay, is there a pair of eyeglasses down under that somewhere? Which is something we would want to preserve, certainly if we found it. But it gets pretty difficult to go through all this stuff. And when we see all these gas cans, we won't store hazardous materials and things like that. We don't do that as a practice if there was gas in them. You can see there's furniture in some of this video. There was a large couch just earlier that I didn't highlight. There's also a pretty good sized bureau. All of these are sitting outside and exposed to the elements. And we're going to talk about bulky things like couches and bureaus and things like that. You can see the staff is sort of working through and just trying to assess more or less where we're going to start. You just saw a little grill there. If that was in good shape, that's something we could hang on to. And again, more storage, more items just piled up, and then trash. Different things are bagged up. Different things may be boxed up. Again, more bike parts. You'll notice there was more than one encampment here. In particular, there's one that was quite a bit bigger, and when I say encampment, I mean more than one tent. There was a tent there that was clearly bigger than the 12 by 12. You could see, again, more bike parts and so on. So I think you get the flavor that when we're in here, it's hard to figure out what is exactly going on. Now, there are encampments and tents where people are there, and they've got everything kind of in their tent, and they're kind of got it all well kept. But I'll tell you, usually by the time we get there on the morning abatement, they've left. Encampments like this, they've not listened to our guidance. They've not heard our conversations and our postings about, hey, we want you to remove your stuff before we get to the abatement. And that's an important piece of context to set here as we get into these next slides, which is that, there's a lot of comments about, signing to release your property or asking us to keep your property. The only time that we're taking personal property that we think is valuable and needs to be protected is when the person isn't there, right? So there isn't someone there to say, that's mine, I'm taking it. So we have to have a process then that's fair enough that says, okay, we'll protect this because it's important. But we can only hold on to those things for so much time. And our expectation in the conversations we're having and the postings that we're putting up are all saying, remove your personal belongings before the abatement. Our focus here is also on the constitutional rights of those individuals to their property. So what you'll notice as I'm walking through this, really the focus is on that 12 by 12. We've talked about it before many times in council. We want people to be in a 12 by 12 space. That's really where we want to focus our efforts on protecting your personal property. As you can see in an encampment like this, and that is not a particularly unusual site, that is very difficult to do when it's all strewn about like that and intermixed with things that are clearly not that valuable, and they're not working, or they're covered in dirt or biohazards or things like that. So sorting through that's problematic. And so really what we're trying to do is get people to focus down on what's inside your tent. But no matter what, when we get there, we're going to be documenting everything that's outside, as well as making sure if we run across something that's an indispensable life necessity, like glasses or a cane or something like that, we will certainly try to store it. But it's not always possible for us to even see these things when it's all piled up like this. So I'm just giving some context. I also want to make sure you understand that what we're going to talk about today and the way we impound and hold things does not apply to any property that's inside a vehicle, okay, an RV or a car or anything like that. That's subject to a whole different set of the vehicle code, and it's already got its own process. So what we're talking about is when this is on the street, on the side of the trail or in the woods or wherever, and it's an encampment, not a vehicle itself. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do anything about the stuff that's surrounding a vehicle or an RV that's on the street and on the sidewalk. We do go through that stuff. I've talked about sort of the purpose and why we're here, and that we're protecting constitutional rights. I do want to point out that one of our we're not only asking first that you approve our report back to you, but also that you delegate back to the city manager the authority to update this policy as it changes. Because if you've been around for a little bit, you know that the court system and the legal system is still wrestling with this issue. Not just this issue, but many things around homelessness and living outside. There's a lot of case law that you have to go through, but there's not a lot of law that's just written about it. So it tends to be case law actions. And so sorting through that's problematic, and when it happens, then we have to be able to adjust. So here's some highlights of things that we've changed or revised. We've certainly clarified a lot of different storage presumptions. We talk about things like what's bulk personal property, and I'll talk about it in a second, but also the kind of things, and I'll give you some examples, that we're really looking for when we're doing an abatement. So any kind of government ID is important, medications, I talked about glasses, if the tent is in good shape, an operable bike. In that video you saw a lot of bike parts, but if it was a fully assembled bike that worked, we'd store that, but mostly what we see are bike parts. Medical equipment I mentioned, photos, for example, that are sitting in the tent or something like that. These are the kind of things and more that we would seek to store. Things we wouldn't would be things that are either biohazards or covered in biohazards. Just stuff that's trash, and we define what we call trash in this procedure. Things that are perishable, we don't store food. It rots pretty quickly and creates a lot of problems. Hazardous materials, I pointed out some of the gas cans, but we also see a lot of things like propane tanks and stuff like that. We also see contraband, and those sorts of things would be turned over to the police and disposed of appropriately and so on. With respect to bulk personal property, we created a definition that basically says we'll store anything that we don't consider bulk that can fit into a 60-gallon drum that can be covered. That's just regular storage. Anything bigger than that, we're considering bulk storage. So in that video, you noticed there was a very big couch. It's longer than this thing I'm sitting at here. That's not something we would end up storing. That one was standing up out in the dirt, and it wasn't in the condition to store. We also don't want to when we see couches, for the most part, they're not in very good shape out there, so we don't anticipate having to store a lot of huge items, but there are some bigger things that may come up and that are of good enough condition and aren't broken or things like that we could store. You know, another thing in there I saw, you would see in the video, if you go back and look at it, there was 2 or 3 sort of mini to medium refrigerators, not the kind that the big size you'd have in your kitchen, but maybe something you might have in a dorm or an office, the smaller size. If that was working and all that, then we could pick that up and store it and it wasn't damaged. But oftentimes they're not working. These things tend to be sourced for scrap. So you're trying to strip some things out of them, sell them back to recyclers and get some money. Speaking of storage, we are updating some of the time frames. So currently right now we store for 90 days. We are recommending we dial that back to 30 days, and that is in part at least because we're expanding the definition of what we're going to store. We are currently still in the process of looking for more storage space. We're a little bit worried about some of the bulk storage, but as I said, a lot of the bigger stuff isn't in very good shape to begin with to qualify for storage, but certainly there could be or would be, including like a fully assembled bike. And for those bulk storage items, we're planning to go to 14 days instead of 30 days. Now, I want to point out in both of these cases, these are minimum storage dates. So let's say we picked up some storage items from Olympia's encampment, but Olympia wasn't there that day. So we have Olympia's stuff stored. We haven't heard from Olympia, and about a week later, somebody calls. Let's say it's an advocate or a caseworker or a friend and says, hey, I know you were here and you took Olympia's X, Y, and Z, but she's been in the hospital. You know, she hasn't gotten out yet. We are happy to hold on to things longer for that. That's not really the issue. The issue is turning these things over. What our experience thus far has been is that it's single digits in terms of percentages of people that come to reclaim stuff that we've picked up and stored. Now, since we're sort of broadening that net now, maybe that will pick up. And we'll learn more about that and see if maybe there's more of that happening. And I will also add that just like UPS, we deliver. So if something of yours is stored with us, you call us, we will be in touch with you within 72 hours. We will not dispose of anything without checking our storage lines before disposing to make sure we didn't get a last-minute call. We will respond to you within 72 hours, and then we will arrange to bring your property to you. A location, time you're choosing within the city, obviously within reason. So we're trying to make it as convenient as we can, understanding that we're kind of in a disorganized and chaotic system that we're trying to bring organization to, which leads me to the documentation. In the documentation, we will increase the amount of photographs we take and the amount of video we take. We had some electronic storage issues, and so we were trying to limit the amount. We do so many abatements and take so many photos and videos that we were challenging our ability to store this. So we've resolved that issue. And so we have a protocol. There'll be a full video outside and inside, much like what you just saw here, where it's just someone walking across the whole thing and sort of getting that macro view and then really dialing in, especially when we see personal storage. Or if we see something that might usually qualify for personal storage, but let's say it had feces all over it, we'd say, well, we're not going to store it, but we're going to photograph it, and we're going to say, okay, we saw this, we know it was there, and here's why we didn't store this, right? So again, we have that information that we can share. And then the training. And Zulma mentioned this on the accommodation side, but also on the property impound side. You have to be trained before you can do any of this work in the field, and that includes all of our vendors or the Conservation Corps, or anybody that's gonna work with us to do this. They would have to be trained. We require 2 times a year refresher training. So if you're new, you gotta train first before you can get in the field, but you'll get a training later in the year again. And then that training is designed to sort of, I would say, evolve with the conditions and things that are going on out there. This already the way we do things isn't the same way we did them just 3 years ago. So again, I want to emphasize this is an evolving area, and we're just trying to kind of keep up and make sure that we can ensure that we're keeping the city clean, we're not allowing any kind of a health crisis to develop, but also that if we pick up someone's personal belongings, we want to get them back to them. We don't have an interest in keeping them, and we're not trying to keep them from them. We talked about the encampment. This would have been where the video was. You can see a few more pictures there, though, of just kind of what we're engaged in and how difficult it is sometimes. I think we go to that last one. And then just a note here at the end. You know, we have, as everybody's aware, we have our budget headwinds, if you will. We always have those, it seems, and so staff resources are always something to worry about. I know the city managers talked with the council previously about optimizing certain programs and what can be refined. BSJ is one of those. Through that process, we've not traditionally had someone just assigned to answer the phone line for personal property storage. It's a secondary duty. This will allow us to actually assign that work and make sure it's given the attention it needs so we can meet our target of within 72 hours, we're in touch with you and rearranging to get your property back. And we will also, as I mentioned, greatly improve our documentation. It's not that we weren't doing it, we just weren't doing enough. We should do more. That is also part of the training and how to do that and how to properly do that. And as I mentioned, we're working right now, and in fact, I think we have a line on a place potentially that we could use to do the personal storage. Some people ask why we don't give out locations of where we store things. We did do that in the past, and unfortunately, then it would get broken into and people would steal things out of there. We have that problem across our system with other things as it is. It can be just our equipment for maintaining parks can get broken into and stolen. So we want to be careful not to really broadcast it. That's why we focus on we'll deliver to you so that we don't have to worry about that. And actually, it's more convenient anyways. Most folks in these encampments don't have transportation of their own. So they would either have to get someone to take them there or pay for transportation to get there somehow. This way it gets it right to you. So with that, again, I'll just repeat by asking that you approve the revised personal property impound standard operating procedure and delegate authority to the city manager or designee to administratively amend that procedure in coordination with our city attorney's office. And with that, we're ready for any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you all very much. Appreciate all of your hard work out in the field and this update. Tony, do we have public comment?
Yes, I have about 5 cards. So when I call you, you do not have to come down in the order that you're called. First person on the microphone, go ahead and speak. I have Brian Darby, John Betts, Batman, Amanda, and Sandy Perry. Come on down.
I know that's quite a bit of work, and I'm pretty good at AI and offering my services free if people want help setting up maybe a better way to monitor, audit, and feedback to people who are trying to get their items back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sandy Perry. I'm speaking today for the Unhoused Response Group, and we're supporting the letter that was put into all of you by the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley and the Real Coalition, calling for changes in the reasonable accommodation in the property impoundment standard operating procedures. Only 8% of the RAs were approved and only 6% of the impounded property was recovered by the owners. The current system isn't working. The least we can do is establish minimal procedures to protect constitutional rights, civil rights, and human rights of the poorest people in San Jose. We support a civilian review board to oversee both the RA process and the property standard operating procedure. When this property operating procedure was first established, I think it was back around 2010 or 2015, we were called in, a bunch of advocates and a bunch of people actually from encampments were called in to give input and to help develop that process. That doesn't seem to be happening anymore. We also support what was raised in the Law Foundation letter, that we have to stop the practices of sweeps with no prior outreach ahead of time. I don't know if that's something that's going to be abandoned from now on by the City Council after the work at Columbus Park. I know there's promises that are being made about the jungle, but there's still a lot of people out there and a lot of cases and a lot of danger of people that are going to end up being swept with no outreach, no opportunity to get into shelter, no opportunity to get into housing. Joint Venture Silicon Valley pointed out that we are the richest area in the history of human history. And we also have the largest disparity in wealth of any area in human history.
Thank you. That's your time. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is John Betts, and I'm with the a group called SOS, Survivors of the Street. And I support what Sandy was saying very much, support what the Unhoused Response Group letter and all that they have been recommending. I stand in the same way that sweeping is and has been very destructive to the people it's targeted at and unconstitutional. So even though it's nice of you to be trying to treat people's belongings better and maybe finally have a good way of really keeping track of people's belongings and having them actually get it back in a proper fashion or have it happen at all, it still doesn't remove the fact that sweeping itself is very destructive and really is a terrible, tragic thing that you have continued to do to the victims of your sweeps. So yeah, it's good that you're trying to finally make some kind of accommodations with this horrible situation of people's stuff supposedly being saved for them to have later, but generally all you ever hear is hardly anybody ever got any of their stuff back. And I have witnessed sometimes the people doing the sweeps, someone would say, "Oh, aren't you saving these people's belongings?" And they say, oh no, I never heard of anything like that. I've witnessed that kind of conversation myself. So, well, good luck with trying to implement something a lot more constitutional and humane. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Also, Emma and Mary, come on down.
Hello, my name is Amanda Cole. I'm also from SOS, Survivors of the Street, and I have survived the street, living in vehicles and shelters for 10 years, until 8 years ago when I joined the street team, and they helped me get housing. My question is, whose grandma will we sweep today, and whose RV will we take away, which is their home, their security? And the tow companies don't actually have a good way to even process those homes that they take away. And what is the justification for the sweeping? I'm not clear on it. It seems like it's causing a huge amount of work to sweeping, and so many sweeps happening, as was talked about. A good solution is to stop the sweeping. That would eliminate the need for all of this new figuring out. And the storage spaces are limited, so instead of just trying to find viable alternatives to sweeping, which would be housing people and supportive permanent housing, and non-commodifying housing. My asks would be to join the Thursday lunches that are on the 17th floor that talk about the Olive pilot program and the Beautify San Jose, to meet with us, because we have a lot of ideas. We know 10,000 very motivated people to find their own housing. Open a navigation center, open a free restaurant. There's lots of vacant buildings. Farming Hope has a vocational program for training people to be in the culinary business. I think the street team that got disbanded was a shame, and hopefully it's built up and
Thank you, that's your time.
even stronger.
Next speaker.
So I feel like we do this song and dance every 6 to 12 months, and I'm sick as hell right now, so I'm going to keep this brief. I really appreciate the efforts from staff to try and make up for the shortcomings of the past with this policy. I want to support what my previous speakers have also said, where we need those policies in place as well. But on top of all of that, I think what everyone really is looking for here is accountability. Accountability is thrown around all the time when we're talking about people living on the street, but not ever considered when we're talking about when policy is not executed correctly. I've been at, I don't know how many sweeps now, trying to help support people when they're getting their belongings taken from them, when they're going through this very traumatic experience. And oftentimes these policies that we have, previous policies, current policy, they're not respected by the people who are, conducting these sweeps. I think what I would like to see on top of everything that staff has recommended is some sort of accountability process when things go wrong. When there is mistreatment of people with a disability, when there is a mistreatment of somebody who has had a important item taken from them and they can't get it back. Accountability goes both ways here. It's not a one-way street. And oftentimes I'll find that the people who are struggling to manage their belongings are the same people who need those accommodations. And what I think we really need to do is have some sort of an accountability process for when things go wrong, on top of being more supportive and more understanding of the people and their situations.
Thank you, that's your time. Next speaker. I'd also like to call down Sean.
Hey everyone, this is Emma from Surge. I'm here today to uplift the recommendations from the Law Foundation, Real Coalition, and the Urge and Grace letters. And I also just want to share that, again, really appreciate the work from staff to improve these policies, and I also remain concerned about the theory versus the practice. What we saw at Columbus Park was every day, dozens and dozens of people not being given any opportunity to indicate which personal belongings they wanted to keep, which personal belongings were important to them. Literally just being, if they weren't there, all of their stuff in the dump immediately. If they were there, being told, okay, you can take 2 trash bags of belongings and everything else is going in the dump. The only person over the entire sweep of Columbus who I saw be able to keep their personal belongings or regain access to them, it was because they were brutally arrested, and I believe there was probably some sort of awareness that there could be legal action involved, and that was the only person who I or any advocate I know saw their belongings stored during that sweep. So just to say, the practice and the actual impact on people's lives is very important, and for that reason I really want to uplift all the recommendations made in those letters, and also just really ask that the full policy be made available and for input and consultation from the actual people with lived experience, from currently and formerly unhoused folks, that the implementation, the sweeps be delayed until there can be actually finally revised policy with input from the folks with lived experience. Obviously the housing outreach is essential and needs to continue, but we should not be sweeping folks when these policies are just barely being revised and we don't have accountability mechanisms. We need a civilian review board, right? This should not be all just under the city manager who, again, I'm sure will work very hard on implementing the policy, but has not lived through a sweep. And if the sweeps have to go forward in April and on the current schedules, then just really hope that you all will be out there with us to see what people are having to go through every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Mary Idzef. I'm here with Surge, Show Up for Racial Justice. I'm going to be really brief. This policy, it doesn't appear to have an adequate notice system for people to be ready before the sweep. And at the time of the sweep, it doesn't sound like there's that much that's allowed either. And I don't know if there's any way to actually help people to accomplish dealing with their belongings. I would love to see that, but probably isn't going to happen anytime soon. And I have some concern about the city manager's office having so much responsibility here. I'm not sure where the oversight would come from. But I would like to see that. And I'd like to see some reflection and to come back with a better policy.
Thank you. Next speaker.
How many small claims cases has the city settled in 2025 or ongoing for lost property? Today, I'm asking for well-thought-out policies for both RA and property prior to initiating the sweeps of the Jungle and Olinder, two very different camps with very different needs. That the council agrees to create an independent civilian oversight board to not only assist with this, but to also continue with issues that arise with RA and the property process. That the council agrees to come back with a more fleshed out RA policy, that no policy be left to the city manager. Council and the oversight committee should approve changes. That the council insists Google Translate not be used for VSPDAT or intake, but rather fully bilingual staff always be on hand and other people in camps not be asked to translate. That the council direct the NyQuil team to not interfere with camps that are being swept. This means not harass, increase arrest, or intimidate people who the city is trying to shelter. These actions create fear, panic, and do not increase cooperation. The differences between the two camps: one camp needs extreme outreach because they are primarily monolingual, and the other camp needs outreach because they are primarily LGBTQ. Lastly, that the mayor stop falsely reporting that everyone from these camps is going to Cerrone, which is against the housing throughput model. Just as people weren't provided bus passes upon being shipped to Rue Ferrari and Bernal, many people are unwilling to find themselves stranded essentially in Milpitas, which is also not a Spanish bilingual community. People do not want to be shipped to an area where they have no community. This is something that is for your department, and that's where I think you could be crucial. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you not looking at me every time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Obadiah. I'm a resident here since 2008. I came from Nigeria, and unfortunately, I'm homeless now. I've been working for 15 years until this year. A year ago, I became homeless, and the situation has not become easy all up to now. So I'm working to make sure my situation is better. However, I wrote something here to present to the council. I want to speak directly to the heart of service workers that are in this city. And anybody did not choose this work and say that the work is easy. The work is not easy, and I want to appreciate every single person that work in the council and work in the field with the homeless people. I really appreciate it. However, there are things that I know that have been going on in the street and in the homeless spaces that are actually really hurting the homeless instead of making the homeless become better in the future. So I want to read this, and if you give me a little bit of time because of my accent and I'm a little bit nervous here, this is my first time to be here. So they start because they care. The people that work in service, everybody cares. That's why we start working in service. And because we care, or you care about people, please don't forget about the reason why you start working in service to serve people, because people are more important than the things even that we are losing. I think I've lost more while I'm homeless than when I had my place.
I'm sorry, that's your time. Back to council.
Thank you. And sir, if you have a write-up, you are welcome to leave it with the clerk to distribute to the council. Thank you. Okay, coming back to the council, we will start with Councilmember Campos.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to begin by thanking staff for today's presentation. Thank you to the Office of Racial and Social Justice and Equity, the Housing Department, and PRNS for preparing today's item. We know that this is meaningful and important work in our city, and I appreciate the steps that staff are taking to strengthen training, documentation, and coordination to improve these processes. It's clear that this is an ongoing process that will continue to evolve and hopefully improve over time. I do have a few questions. So the first is, as centralized tracking is implemented, how will council be able to evaluate patterns and outcomes over time to ensure that our policy and funding decisions are based on accurate and complete information?
Thank you, Councilmember. I think probably the simplest way is incorporating some of these metrics and details about how it's going. You know, we come through NSC committee twice a year on the focus area around homelessness, and so it seems like this would make sense to be there. And then I think if the committee thought, well, something rises to the level of council, you know, they could make that recommendation.
Thank you, John. We also heard in public comment the importance of incorporating lived experience into how these policies are implemented. And I agree that lived experience can strengthen how systems function in practice, particularly as this work continues to evolve. So as we move forward on implementation, what mechanism will the city use to incorporate lived experience into ongoing process improvements?
It's a good question. We don't have a specific process set up for that. We are in the encampments, though, every day, everywhere, talking to people living outdoors. We have people that work for us doing this work that have their own lived experience with this. So we hear directly from the individuals who are being abated or having struggles with the storage or concerns about how to get it. So I feel like we have a very direct line. You know, remember, we do a whole bunch of lines of service. We're not just there abating. We're there, in particular, on a weekly or biweekly basis to pick up trash from you. And those are conversations that you're having in those moments over and over and over again, getting to know. So I do feel like we have a pulse on what people's primary concerns are. Can we answer every concern? Or, you know, sometimes people are suggesting, well, there needs to be appeals processes or longer storage periods or more things you should store. You know, that's all policy conversations about sort of how far do you push the line one way or the other. You know, we talked about some of our resource constraints and capacity. That's part of the consideration as well, along with, of course, first and foremost, ensuring we're protecting those legal rights. That's what this is primarily about, so that people can retrieve their property and are treated correctly. This is all, by the way, in the noticing as well. So I feel like we have that line. I don't know that we need to set up one. I know there used to be one years ago. I can't remember, some years ago it just stopped. Maybe it was the pandemic that kind of might have ended it, like so many other things. You know, I'm certain I could have a conversation with the Director of Housing about whether or not they want to stand up some kind of a process or group to work with, but we don't currently have one.
Thank you for that answer, John. One note I took from the public comment that really stood out to me was how the importance of bilingualism and making sure that we are communicating effectively, especially that human-to-human translation as much as possible. So I just wanted to call that out from the public comment. And you also mentioned during the presentation around personal property, standard operating procedure not applying to vehicle tow situations. And so from a systems perspective, I want to better understand how these policies interact. When a vehicle or RV is towed, how is personal property inside that vehicle classified and documented? And is there any procedural bridge between the towing authority and personal property protections?
So There's really two things we're looking at when we have a vehicle that is being towed, and I mentioned this a little bit in the presentation. The first part is what's outside the vehicle. That's what we concern ourselves with on the Beautify team. Once the vehicle's towed, it goes into an impound process. So there are very specific laws, and I can't recite them for you here, that dictate how that property is to be handled, and it's a whole separate system from what we do, and it's related to the tow operator and their business practices. I don't know if anything you want to clarify on that? No.
Okay.
So they're kind of two separate things. That's why I didn't get too into the what's inside a vehicle. It's just treated very differently. And in fact, in most cases, what's the point in even taking the personal stuff out of the vehicle? Might as well leave it in there. It's secure. Rather than now we're going to take it out and create a whole new system and process for that. I don't think it makes a lot of sense that way either.
I was just going to jump in and say, yes, the materials inside the vehicle are held to a different standard within state law. We have found that it is more beneficial for the individuals to leave those items in the car because they are allowed additional access and protection when it's there. So we've kept that as a status quo for now, but it'll be something that we continue to review as we continue with the work.
Thank you. I have just one more question. For review processes to be meaningful, timing matters. So can staff please clarify what review or appeal processes are available and at what stage they occur if there is an individual who disagrees with either a reasonable accommodation determination or a personal property classification decision?
I'll start on the personal property. We don't have an appeals process for that. You know, I mentioned as part of what we wrote in the language, for example, the time frame for which we hold it is qualified by saying it's at a minimum of that amount. You know, we're flexible, have been. This is not new for us. You know, people go to the hospital or sometimes go to jail, things like that, and things happen. We get that. Again, most of the time when we're doing abatement, people are either, when we arrive, they're either finishing up, grabbing whatever personal stuff they're going to take and they've left, or they've already left, right? This is really focusing on the people who aren't there, their stuff. And it's narrow in that way. If you're there, we're going to say take whatever you want to take with you. Everything else we're going to dispose of. So we tell them right there, just take it. And one of the things we've done to make that a little easier, so our current process is on the day of abatement, we've been noticing for who knows how long, and we know that you know that we're coming on this date and that we're going to abate. So if you're still there and you haven't started yet, we don't actually give you a ton of time because we've been working and telling you all along. This is what was going on in Columbus. There's nobody that can convince me that the people living in Columbus Park did not know that there was an abatement coming. We were meticulous about posting and talking and creating lists and names and everything. Any big abatement is that way. And large abatements, we would as part of this policy, we would not abate inside of 72 hours just because of the complexity of it. Most abatements, though, get 72 hours. There are a few abatements, so if you just popped up on the street, you can't be in the street, right? We have our setbacks. If you were right next to a school within the setback, you're going to get abated immediately. But typically in those cases, you just take your stuff with you and go. That's what we're trying to accomplish, and that's generally what happens. And generally what's left behind is not high quality material. We don't have a process for you to say, you shouldn't have taken other than obviously you could go to the court and make a claim, but we don't have any kind of internal process or appeals process, and I'm not even sure what it would be for with respect to us taking personal property when the person is not there. And then Zuma probably on the accommodations.
We have not been steeped into the reasonable accommodations process, but from our review, there are established grievance procedures, and they're noted on the Public Works webpage, which does say that within 15 calendar days there needs to be a response. Having said that, we also recognize that that one of the recommendations that we're making is that we have to make this process in a way that's accessible, so that it is standard plain language, that it's multilingual, and so people understand what the process is without having to go to different places in the city.
Thank you for those responses. And I am going to move that we accept the staff recommendation and request that staff return to NSC, the Neighborhood Services and Education Committee, where in June we'll have the City Council focus area status report on reducing unsheltered homelessness. And as John mentioned, that might be a good opportunity for an implementation update. So that is part of my motion to accept the staff recommendation and then request an implementation update at the June NSC meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. Councilor Komet.
Thank you for the presentation and report, and I want to thank everyone who is involved in this situation. You know, I want to lift up something, and I'm sorry that he left. Before, you know, just recently, you know, we received the information of what, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Obadiah said that no one signs up for this work because it's easy. And it's true. People care. And I think that we've gone through a whole iterative process. You know, what we were doing last year or the year before is different. I wanted to know what is the ratio of staff versus contractors? Because one of the things that has been brought to my attention is some of the inconsistency in training. I know that there was sort of a mix of, you know, staff doing some of the work, contractors doing some of the work. So I'm curious because the largest complaint that I have received is the inconsistency. And I think when you have that, you know, it becomes problematic.
Thank you, Councilmember. So at the beginning, it's about a 1-to-1 ratio of vendor personnel to our own personnel, but our personnel lead every abatement. So we're in charge of the situation. We're directing their work. There's also, I mentioned earlier the process of optimizing Beautify. Mm-hmm. Through that process, we will become less reliant on vendors. So that ratio is going to change, and it will be more city staff than vendors out there going forward. So as we're expecting to do fewer abatements going forward than the last year that went by.
Okay, that's great, because I think that, you know, the more that we can be more consistent, I think that, you know, you mentioned in the report that we're going to, you know, do training over, you know, a period of time and have to retrain and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But, you know, if you're constantly do not have control over who are the contractors' staff, you know, I mean, their training may not be quite the same as ours. So I think that we ought to keep that in mind. And then, you know, I know that, you know, in terms of, I mentioned it being an iterative process, and I'm glad it will be coming to NEC because, you know, we do want to improve. We do want to make things better. So I'm really thrilled about that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilmember. Councilmember Dewan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to PRNS and Beautify SJ. And thank you for all the speaker. My question is, when you run across a unsheltered resident who have mental illness and unable to make the decision to what to bring with him or her, how do you deal with that?
I missed the last part. What to bring what?
To bring their belonging, right? They have mental illness, and so they're undecisive on what is important, what is not, in order to bring with them, right?
Yeah, that's it. It would be an unusual situation. Again, if they're there, we're saying, okay, take what's yours and you have to take it. We do actually have, you know, if we find that person is in crisis, we'd actually have therapeutic specialists that work with this team, and they're designed for situations like this to kind of come in, calm down, okay, John, let's walk through this. We have to help you collect your stuff. Now, in that situation, our abatement staff's gonna probably go around that person, do other work, let that person work their magic with this individual and try to help them get to a decision. Sometimes they can find a case manager and get a hold of them and get help, things like that. But typically people aren't there to begin with to even have that conversation.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. What about a situation where you have a mother with 2 young kids, and kids sometimes they're running around and they decide, okay, well, I want to bring this and that. How do you allot a accommodation regarding timeline and how much they can bring and how much into storage?
So the accommodation process, which is done by housing department, is well coordinated with what we do in terms of abatement. That is all. What we're trying to do is assess that before the abatement in the first place. And we learned this starting last summer. This is when this new process of accommodation started, and we developed a process to make sure we were helping people get whatever accommodation that we could provide for them. And that's meant to be done before we get there for the abatement. So we work really hard at that. So we really, at the time of abatement, we don't really run into that issue. Those people would have already been offered a way out probably, particularly in the bigger encampments. Now, outreach isn't with us at every abatement. I want to be clear about that. Typically, they're around the bigger abatements. So we have a big one coming up in your district that you're familiar with. There'll be outreach all over that for weeks and a couple months, right? It's already happening now, and we won't even get there till April. So that's all meant to be done ahead of time. Now, if it happens on the day of and somebody just springs it on us like, oh, we didn't think you needed this accommodation, we'll pause on that person. Okay, what needs to be done? Call somebody in. Who needs to help? Let's see what we can figure out for you. Is it just you need help moving your stuff from A to B? Even if you're saying yes to housing, you might need help just moving your stuff into the housing because you're not capable. We can figure those things out at the time. So we're able to be nimble like that. We're not just a machine that's just going down, not stopping. We take into account the circumstances at the moment in time.
Thank you. And regarding the storage, what are the percentage of people actually retrieve their belonging after storage, the minimum dates and so on?
It's less than 10%, council member. So when we come back to NSE in June, we'll see, has it changed from that? So we'll be able to show you some historic data, and then since March, what's changed? Because assuming this is approved by council, we'll be quickly updating all of our posting notices and everything to talk about what's the process, who do you call, what can you expect, where do you go for these kind of things. So all that'll be pretty quickly updated so that people are understanding sort of what their rights are and how to get in touch with us if you're missing something. So that's how we do it.
Well, thank you very much. I know it's not a perfect process, but we can always improve and try to make people's lives a little bit easier as a transition to either emergency interim housing or permanent shelter. Thank you again.
Thanks, council member. Just as we close out, I'll just add my thanks to staff. This is a really tough situation out on the streets for our homeless neighbors, of course, first and foremost. Also, city staff, who I've visited many times in the field, who are on the front lines, providing trash pickup, outreach, impromptu counseling, and taking a lot of feedback and doing the really hard work of helping us manage our public spaces. So I'm grateful to our team. Obviously, the current processes we've followed are legal and in many cases go far above and beyond what the law requires and what most other cities do, and yet we know in the spirit of continuous improvement that we can do better. We've gotten feedback that people have been, have questions or confused, want to see us do even better, and that's the spirit of this update, is staff really reflecting and thinking about how can we ensure it's as accessible as it can be in different languages, give people as much time, and do our very best to store things and get them back to folks if they're not there at the time of abatement. So I appreciate staff continuing to bring forward improvements and acknowledge that we can always do better. I think that's always true across all of our departments, all of our service lines. But I just wanted to acknowledge the really difficult work, but important work people are doing out there. And thank you for this update and continuing to do that work. Tony, let's vote on the motion from Councilmember Campos.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. We are on to item 3.5. This is the Community Oversight Committee Annual Report on Measure T. We will hear an update on allocations for fiscal year 24-25. We have a staff presentation. So we'll turn it over to Matt Lesh, Director of Public Works, when he and the team are ready.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I appreciate the time. We are here to present the Citizen Oversight Committee for the Measure T, and with us are some of our committee members to present on the topic of Measure T and how we performed last year with their audit. And so they're going to present on behalf. We have some members they'll introduce as they speak, and we'll get going here. So, oops, back one too far. When you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Nick Cochran. I am a 40-year resident of District 6 and the current chair of the Community Oversight Committee. And to my right are Gary Cunningham from District 1 and Shruti Chandaskar from District 9. Representing District 9, and they were both former chairs, and the three of us will be happy to answer any questions that you might have once we complete our very brief overview. As Matt indicated, this report, which we deliver annually to the City Council, is as of the fiscal year end of June 30, 2025. The full report, our full report, which is quite detailed, was delivered to you folks about 3 weeks ago. And what I'm going to do is highlight just a very few salient key points that I think you should all be aware of that resulted in our findings. So, Matt, if you can, is it just hit the one? Okay. So, no, that's fine. Let's go. Yeah, next one. The one that you had. Sorry, I didn't see that one up there. Next one. Okay, so this bond measure was passed in 2018, called for $650 million primarily for infrastructure, disaster preparedness, and public safety. We issued $440 million worth of bonds in 2019 and 2021. And the remaining $209 million was actually issued in July of 2025, which will find its way into our report next year, and that will wrap up all of the issuance for Measure T. We are probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through spending for this whole entire program. And next slide, please. This is a summary. There's considerably more detail in our annual report, but shows year by year what the city has spent, and these are audited numbers and reviewed by our committee every year, showing what has been spent in the various categories of traffic, public safety, storm sewer, municipal improvements, parks and community. And through the end of last June, we had spent $455 million, 80% of which is represented by traffic and public safety. The remainder of my comments are really going to focus on those two areas. Next slide, please. You know, I've been a tax-paying citizen here in San Jose for a long, long time. And I'm very proud to say that this slide brings a lot of joy to my heart, because I don't think any of us, including you who are elected to do this, can say this very often. We have paved considerably more miles with less money than was originally planned. The original plan called for 420 miles and with roughly half the money, and we have exceeded that already. And with the next couple of years before these funds are exhausted, we will probably see outperformance on the neighborhood of 30 or 40%. And as the last bullet point points out, states this outperformance has been achieved through operational efficiencies and leveraging other funding sources. I want to acknowledge DPW's role and DOT's role in getting us across the goal line ahead of plan and with less money being spent to get there. I mean, this is just a wonderful thing to be able to, normally you probably hear, well, we got close, but we're a little behind the 8 ball. We're ahead of the game, and that's quite good. Next slide, please. The other 1/3 of the Measure T funds are dedicated or have been dedicated to public safety projects, 10 of which were originally scoped. 3 have been completed, as indicated there in the first bullet point. 4 are currently under construction and are expected to be completed utilizing currently allocated Measure T funds. In other words, They've been budgeted for and reserves have been allocated, the contracts have been issued. There's enough money to get these things done and across the goal line within the allocated dollars. The third bullet point, there are 3 items, the 911 call center upgrades, which was recently awarded, Fire Station 36, and the police admin building upgrades that are still in the design phase. And there is, as that third bullet point points out, $14.5 million in unallocated reserves still available. That is unencumbered or unallocated funds from Measure T that will probably, in all likelihood, be allocated in some percentage to these 3 items to get them done. And Fire Station 23 was put in there because that is a land-only component right now. The acquisition of that land is currently pending. In our discussions at our meeting in early January, one of the things that we were concerned about was we've got 3 projects which are in the design phase. We had original allocations, which what we've seen in the public safety area is we end up short. We typically end up short in the allocated amount versus original budget or projection. When this whole program was put together, the City Council and all the people involved in this had enough foresight to reserve a fair amount of money. I think it was something on the order of $75 million for reserve against exactly this sort of thing. Inflation, error, misjudgment, miscalculation, whatever. And a lot of moving parts have gone along to make all this work. Our concern is with 3 projects still pending, that $14.5 million may or may not be enough. We don't know. We don't know, neither does DPW, because the contracts haven't been put out, the final design specs haven't been made available. DPW has indicated that these projects will not proceed if insufficient funds are available. However, if you'll turn to the very last slide, it's our feeling that City Council would be prudent to establish a rank-ordered priority of those 3 remaining projects in case this whole thing kind of runs off the rails and we're woefully short of available money. I don't know, whether that's a realistic assumption or not, or a concern, but it is something that we want to let you know that that's uppermost on our mind. And the other recommendation is, again, we've got a number of unfilled seats, and we would encourage City Council. I think most of these are citywide seats other than D10 that need to be filled. So whoever is responsible up there or in your staff or whatever, it would be helpful to get them, because sometimes with a smaller number we have problems making quorums for meetings. So that's all I have to say, and the 3 of us are here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you for your time and attention.
Great. Thank you, Nick, and all of our oversight committee members. Matt, really impressed with how much impact we've had on Measure T. Road paving in particular has been just incredible. But yeah, I'm excited by the progress and appreciate. I think the citizen oversight role has been critical in building trust and helping us make sure we're using the dollars as effectively as we can. So,
it's been an incredible learning experience for those of us that are just common citizens to figure out how all this works. And putting this all together in the last, I think all of us, I know Gary and I have been on since the inception, and I think Shruti came on shortly thereafter. So there's a lot of benefit to having some people that have been here for a while. We're not stumbling around in the dark. And I also want to just add my personal thanks to both Sal Kumar and Christy No. Sal is the deputy director of the DPW, and Christy is a senior analyst. Their liaison, their effectiveness, their liaison effectiveness with the COC is terrific, absolutely terrific.
Great. That's excellent. Thanks for adding that note. Shruti, Gary, Nick, thank you for your leadership on the Oversight Committee. We really appreciate it. We're going to turn to public comment before we continue. Tony, do we have public comment?
Yes, Brian. Darby, come on down.
I read through the report, and I did want to say thank you. Very well done. And I would just like, on the emergency response or emergency planning, I haven't seen any kind of incorporation of amateur radio. When everything else breaks, amateur radio still works. So I would really suggest you look into that. 2 meter, 10 meter, something, even, I hate to say it, but even CBs. If the networks go down, if the power goes out, a lot of these things may be the only type of communication you can have. Thank you.
Back to council.
Okay. Thank you. We'll turn to Councilor Kamei first.
Yes, thank you so much for the report and presentation. I really want to thank the committee for, working all of these years to really make these things possible and watching the dollars. I'm so excited to hear about the paving because, being ahead of the game is something we don't hear too much about. So I'm going to have a little story in my newsletter about that because this year we're fortunate in District 1 to be the next sort of like big chunk to be able to have a lot of the paving done. So I'm very, very excited about that. We're going to see a lot of activity this year in District 1. Thank you, Gary. And it's good for the community to know where we are on this. So I really, really appreciate it. I want to thank you so much for your time and efforts in making all of this possible in collaboration with our staff. So, and I'd like to thank staff as well, being able to get all this stuff done on top of everything else, right? So with that, I would like to move acceptance of the Measure T Community Oversight Committee Annual Report.
Excellent. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the work you do serving on the Measure T Citizens Oversight Committee. Nick, when you first started talking about the miles that we had paved and how many years you had been a resident in the District 6 area, I thought you were going to say, this is the first time I've had my streets paved in 40 years that I've been in my house.
I thought I'd leave that out.
Yeah, because a lot of our residents feel that and remember the last time they had their streets paved. They'll all tell you, when is my street going to be paved? So I'm really excited, to Councilmember Kamei's point, to see that the target was 420 miles, but we've actually paved 516 miles. That's incredible.
With another 163 yet to come.
Which is fabulous. Our residents love this. This is something they can turn to and say, yes, the city is actually doing something for me. It's really wonderful, and I too now have something to add into my newsletter about Measure T, so it's really exciting.
It's a win for the taxpayers, it's a win for the resident, it's a win for everybody.
It absolutely is. And I know you have a lot of vacancies, so are there times that you are not able to establish a quorum?
We've had some tight ones.
We've gotten through by the hair of our chinny chin from meeting to meeting. I mean, somebody gets stuck in traffic and we can't start till they get, it's one of those, it's close. It's close.
I see that the three of the vacancies are city staff positions. The citywide public safety, citywide environmental issues, these are members of the public who have these specialties?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then District 10, not to call you out, but District 10, you have a vacancy over there. I know what that is like with the senior commission and all of that. So I appreciate your comment about the rank ordered priorities too, as we go into the budget process and the difficulties with the things that we need to prioritize with the budget. I think it's worth a conversation at the city to prioritize the big three remaining items: the call center, the fire station 36, and then the police admin building upgrade. So I thank you for bringing that to our attention, and maybe someone in the PIS-FIS committee can prioritize those and figure out how they're coming back, because that comes through them, I believe. Or Matt, do you have an idea?
Yeah, 911 has already been awarded, and so what they're requesting is stack ranking the three of those in what order you would recommend if you so desire. For awareness, we're through design pretty well on 36. That'll be going out to bid later this year. We're going to have a Measure T update for like the current fiscal year stuff in a couple of weeks here at council for you to read. That'll be inundating you with more information about the project statuses. And so the way they're listed there is fine, and we're certainly marching down that direction anyways.
Okay, great.
So I don't know you need to take further action, but if you so desire, it's your call.
I don't think I'm prepared to make that recommendation right now, but I thank you for bringing it to our attention, and I thank you for serving on the Measure T task force, and Matt, for the work you're doing. Thank you.
If I can just add, the reason for suggesting rank ordering is my personal big fear is the bridge to nowhere. In other words, the 3 projects that are half finished rather than 2 done and one delayed. That's my big fear. I have a lot of faith and trust in working with DPW and seeing how they operate for the last 5 or 6 years. I don't think that's likely to happen, but you hear about that all the time, and that would really annoy me, to put it mildly.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Let's go to Councilmember Dwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the community oversight members and our Public Works Department. It was great news to hear that, we paved more miles. I do have a couple of questions for you. So there is approximately $206 million left. And out of those, my understanding is the 3 prioritization is 911 call center, Fire Station 36, and Police Administration Building. What is the cost breakout per item there? Do you know?
So we're going to have the report in 3 weeks on the 24th of this month, and we'll have finer details to share there. 911's already taken care of because it's already been awarded. We're at about 16 million for Fire Station 36, or maybe it's 20 million. I'm coming the numbers off the top of my head. The Police Administration Building is a variety of projects and efforts that we're deciding amongst, and where we're going to spend those monies there. And so there'll be some details in the memo on the 24th. And so we've allocated what we believe is all of the money that's allocated. The 200 million that's listed, that includes paving and the remainder of the projects that have yet to be let out. That's the expended money that's remaining. Some of it's already been allocated, though, to be spent.
Yeah, I know that the grand jury study in 2016 was to include Station 36 in there. And are we at the final stage? Are we completely done with the design and planning for Station 36?
No. It's not done with the design. We're not letting it out yet. It'll be let out later this year.
Okay, so we're anticipating it'll be complete by the end of this year?
No, it will be let out to bid later this year. It is a 2027 completion. The report we'll have out on the 24th will have all those details.
Okay, and I just wonder why it took so long, even though the predicament that Station 37, 32, and 36 was in the plan for the last, how many, 10 years? Why did it take so long to get it out to the RFP?
Well, one, we had to get access to the land, and CEQA needed to happen. The design needed to be completed. The design is being wrapped up. We'll put it out to contract as soon as the design's done. So it's more just order of operations. We had the 2 other stations that we're building, 32 and 8 currently. Those are already in construction, so 36
Yes.
is the next one.
Well, I'm afraid that if we stretch out the timeline, the costs will rise, and then those, I don't want to see Station 36 on a hold pattern.
It's not on a hold pattern.
Okay. I'll hold you to that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to it.
All right, thanks, Councilmember. We'll go to Councilmember Cohn.
Thank you, and thanks for the overview and for the great work on managing Measure T. I'll just, my frustration, which is the last thing on the list. There's the 3 projects that are remaining, but State Fire Station 23 doesn't have a clear path forward. I am I'm pleased to see that we got the resources to buy the land and that we now have identified the land and are moving forward with that purchase. Matt, do we have any thoughts about what the next step will be at that point and what the timeline might look like and where funding might come from to actually do the work?
So to do the work for construction?
Yeah, I mean to move on beyond that.
That's not been identified, so I'll just put that, we have not identified the construction money. We don't even think we have a clear path to the design money, which is another $2 million. And so we believe there's a path to the property, and there'll be a council action fairly soon that we'll be bringing it for you in terms of how that land acquisition will be proceeding.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I figured that was the answer, but I just wanted to continue to elevate that project as being
It is very important to us, and it's important to the fire services as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. And once again, just want to thank our Citizen Oversight Committee members for your diligence and great work. Matt, you and the team, and I know coordination with other departments like DOT have just done a tremendous job of deploying these dollars and building public trust. So thank you for the good work.
Yeah, I'd be remiss, just Department of Transportation has been crushing it on the paving. Really, they've been really innovative in terms of the procedures, the way they've done it, multi-year contracts, and the way they've packaged things together. Really is, I mean, we've gotten to a lucky market that has nothing to do with it. There's a lot of skill on DOT's part. They've done a really great job, and I'd just be remiss not to put a lot of praise of the paving on them, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for noting that. Appreciate it. Okay, Tony, let's vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you all. We're on to item 6.1, Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan, and we do have a staff presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Mitchell, the Director of the Energy Department, and very pleased today to be joined by Julie Benavente. She's our Deputy Director of our Climate Smart, and Michael Gonzalez, who is our Program Manager in ESD, as well as Jeff Provenzano, the Director of ESD. This item is our Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. It's a new plan that the staff has worked on for the last few years, and we're very excited to present it to City Council today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Good afternoon. Today we're going to cover some background on the project, a vulnerability assessment that we completed as part of the project, the framework and measures, engagement and input, as well as next steps and our recommendation. In 2018, the city adopted the Climate Smart San Jose plan, which focuses on reducing our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. And the Climate Smart plan noted that climate adaptation and resiliency planning should be completed, since San Jose, even with increased greenhouse gas reduction efforts, is likely to encounter, and we have seen is encountering, increasing climate change impacts like droughts, wildfires, changing weather, and sea level rise. In late 2023, the city received a $650,000 state grant, which has allowed us to begin this effort and complete this effort. While the city's Climate Smart plan addresses strategies to reduce or mitigate emissions and slow climate change, as I've mentioned, and the city's emergency management plans outline actions for responding to immediate hazards, including climate-related and non-climate-related disasters, the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan identifies measures and strategies to reduce the impact of climate change, addressing the questions of how we can better prepare and adapt to climate risks. We've had several steps since receipt of the grant to develop this plan, as noted on this slide, and leading us to today's council meeting. Part of the technical analysis included the city working with its technical consultant, Ramey and Associates, to prepare a San Jose climate vulnerability assessment. The vulnerability assessment is a high-level analysis of how projected climate hazards may affect the city's populations, buildings, critical facilities, utility infrastructure, and transportation systems for the purpose of informing the prioritization and development of adaptation strategies and measures that are included in the plan. The vulnerability assessment evaluates 5 major climate hazards that are already occurring or projected to intensify in San Jose, which includes flooding and more extreme and severe drought, wildfire smoke and events, sea level rise and storm surge, and more frequent extreme heat waves. It drew from a combination of quantitative and qualitative data sources to identify vulnerability ratings for assets and populations, including the existing Silicon Valley 2.0 climate change preparedness tool, federal emergency management agency maps, adapting to rising tides, sea level rise data, and local and regional planning documents, including the Santa Clara County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan and City of San Jose Annex. Key findings for San Jose indicate that flooding is the most impactful hazard to infrastructure and populations in the city, followed by extreme heat and sea level rise. Extreme heat's greatest impact is to health and safety of residents. Sea level rise and storm surge pose increasing long-term risks, but are geographically limited to northern portions of the city. Wildfire risk is present within city limits, but geographically limited as well, and wildfire smoke from regional fire activity is a more impactful hazard. Vulnerable populations, which may include low-income mobile home residents, individuals with sensitivities, are disproportionately impacted by extreme heat, air quality, and flooding. The assessment concluded that the adaptation plan strategies should focus on facility assessments, infrastructure upgrades, community engagement, and resilience measures tailored to vulnerabilities. The plan framework subsequently identified 4 measure categories, which are pictured here, to structure the plan: knowledge, governance and policy, structural, and communications. The plan also focused on measures that were within the city's direct control to implement, integrate with related city plans and policies, address infrastructural, community, and ecosystem impacts from climate-related hazards, and address inequalities and reduce climate-related impacts to vulnerable communities. The CARP includes 19 measures, each supported by 1 or more implementation strategies for a total of 62 strategies. The knowledge category includes measures around data and studies. The governance and policy category includes measures around stakeholder engagement, design standards, and planning. The structural category includes measures around infrastructure improvement. The communications category includes measures around effective and enhanced information sharing with the community. The plan was informed, reviewed, and finalized through an extensive stakeholder engagement processes shown here, which includes interviews, presentations, a survey, tabling events, and small group meetings. Throughout the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan development process, city staff conducted bi-monthly Climate Ready Working Group meetings, which included representatives from 6 city departments that are listed here, and also included the project's community-based organization lead partners, Spur and Valley Water. To support the CARP measure implementation, city staff will continue currently funded work activities, including steps to make Roosevelt Community Center into a climate resiliency hub, sub-regional shoreline adaptation planning, reducing water demand and or increase non-potable water sources, and a technical assistance program workshop planned for this March to advise the city on equity-centered best practices pertaining to CARP implementation. Additional implementation efforts will occur over time as the city acquires funding. Our recommendation is that City Council adopt the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan and approve the incorporation of the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan into our annual Climate Smart updates. And we'll open for questions.
Great, thank you for the report, appreciate it. Tony, do we have public comment?
Lena, come on down.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Lena Drape, and I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. I'm pleased to share the Open Space Authority's support for the city's climate adaptation and resilience plan. We specifically want to thank staff, including Lori, Julie, and analyst Hannah Greenberg, for their effort to gather and implement feedback from partners, including the Open Space Authority, who already play a central role in this work. The CARP provides a tremendous opportunity to leverage public investments by further integrating nature-based solutions into the city's climate adaptation and resilience planning. As identified by the council-adopted natural and working land element, our city's open spaces and agricultural lands are not just nice-to-haves. They are not just undeveloped lands waiting for development. These lands sequester carbon, grow our food, provide clean drinking water, protect us from floods and wildfire. Without them, including when they are paved over, we cannot be resilient. So thank you again to staff for their work to integrate what we already know through science and data into our city's actual climate adaptation and resilience plans. Thank you.
Back to council.
Great, thank you. Okay, coming back to the council, Councilmember Dwan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you very much for all your hard work and accomplishment. And I just want to move to accept the climate adaptation and resilience plan.
Sorry, my mic went off there. Great. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Tony, let's vote.
Motion passes unanimously with fully absent.
And that might be Foley.
Possibly.
Foley, did you want to vote?
Yes.
That's a yes. Thumbs up.
Motion passes
All
unanimously
right.
with
Thank
all
you to
present.
staff for the report. Thank you all. That was our last agendized item. We are on to open forum, which is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not on today's agenda. Tony, do we have open forum?
Yes, I have 4 cards. Jim, come on down. Brian, Obadiah, and Jose.
All right. Brian, you're welcome to begin. I only see one speaker, Tony, but we'll let Brian go first.
Okay, I've said this a bunch of times, and I'm going to try to say it again. I sent each of you a copy. I think there's one thing we can do that doesn't cost very much money. Other states do it. Our state does it. A lot of cities do it. The thing I sent you, and this I'm going to leave with the clerk, is a day of recognition for people who are victims of crime. And it doesn't, I mean, it obviously a real serious crimes like, violence or robbery or something, they may hit the headlines and then it fades off. The people are still left there. And I read on Nextdoor and a bunch of other places where people, they lose their cars, they lose their tools, they lose their house is broken into. The one thing that's consistent is a lot of them do not feel supported. They're told do not fill out reports, or because nobody's going to do anything about it. There's not enough police. And it's not an accusation against anybody. This day would just simply have a day. There's a lot of other people, groups that are recognized. This is something that crosses every single demographic. So I would appreciate it if somebody could please look into it, maybe make it an agenda item at one time. Thank you.
Back to council.
Okay. Thank you. Well, everybody, we're adjourned. Have a wonderful afternoon.